My name is Sally, and I live with my husband, Mark, and our 5-year-old daughter. I'm 31 years old and work full-time. We're not rich or poor, just a normal, close-knit family. Everything changed when a storm named Victoria hit our lives. Mark's mother lost her husband, Pat, and had been living alone since then. At the start of our marriage, Mark and I agreed not to live with her, which worked out well for everyone. Mark is her only son, and she had him late in life. After 5 years of our marriage, she had gotten older, and living alone was becoming hard and dangerous for her. Mark would visit her, but it was clear it was difficult for him to handle everything on his own. Watching him struggle, I decided it was time for her to move in with us. My husband was working hard, and I wanted to support him. So I gathered my courage and told him about my decision. He was surprised and unsure at first, and honestly, so was I. But I knew we needed to do something. I told him I wouldn't be able to do much since I still had to take care of our daughter, the house chores, and my job. If anything happened to his mom, he would be the one responsible. We talked about it a lot and finally agreed to bring her into our home. When she moved in, she thanked me with tears in her eyes on a beautiful spring day when cherry blossoms were in bloom. Seeing how grateful she was, I thought we would live happily together. At first, she was kind and respectful, but as time passed, her true nature showed. She started to bully me, and I realized I had made a mistake in my decision. Unfortunately, things had become too difficult for me to handle. When I did as I was told, she complained, "Why did you make it so tasteless? Are you mocking me? How rude." This was just the beginning. "Oh, my clothes must be washed by hand. The washing machine will ruin them. They're all high quality," she said. When I suggested taking them to the dry cleaner, she responded, "What a waste of money. You're living off my son's income. You should think more about saving." She could have easily paid for the dry cleaning herself, but she didn't seem to care. I realized she was just trying to harass me, especially since she smirked the whole time. But that was only the beginning. Things got worse. "Sally, do you wear makeup? It doesn't seem to help much," she said. "You're plain to start with. My granddaughter is lucky she takes after my son, who looks like me. She has a bright future." She would wake up at 4 a.m. to put on makeup for over 2 hours. Afterward, she looked completely different. I could respect her desire to stay beautiful, but her foundation was too light for her skin, making her look like a geisha, and her cheeks were oddly red. On top of that, I struggled to clean her bright red lipstick off the cups. Even though I knew it was rude to criticize someone's appearance, I stayed quiet. What really upset me was when she threw away my precious makeup set. When I got home from work, the whole thing was gone. I asked her why she had thrown it away. She sneered at me, saying, "I've told you before, that makeup doesn't work on your ugly face. Don't waste money on useless things. Save it. From now on, no more makeup. Aren't I so caring for this family? You better appreciate me." If I could, I would have screamed in the mountains, letting my never echo back at her. But I wasn't in the mountains, and she only bullied me when we were alone. When Mark was at work and our daughter was in preschool, I hesitated to complain to Mark about his mother, but I still wanted him to know what was happening. After much thought, I gently expressed my dissatisfaction, but it didn't help. "I'll talk to her," he said, but when he did, she denied everything in tears, even claiming I was trying to frame her. Mark was confused and didn't know what to do, and I could only roll my eyes in frustration. If she wouldn't admit to her actions, I needed a plan. I decided to secretly record our interactions and show them to Mark. While I was figuring out where to hide a camera, her bullying escalated. She had moved in during spring, and after a hot summer and autumn, winter arrived. One day, Mark was away on a business trip, and our daughter was staying with my parents. It was snowing outside, and I usually drove to work. But I had chains put on my tires and took a taxi that day. After work, I cleaned the house, did the laundry, and cooked dinner. Let me emphasize, it was the dead of winter, and snow was piling up outside. It was definitely not the time to wash clothes by hand. Despite this, Victoria handed me a pile of her laundry with a grin and said, "Here's my laundry. These are expensive clothes, so you must wash them by hand," she repeated, knowing I wouldn't like it. "I'll wash them in warm water," I replied. "No, you can't. The colors will fade and you'll damage the fabric. You must wash them in cold water the whole time." I was losing my patience. It was snowing outside, and I thought, are you kidding me? Why should I use cold water on this freezing night? If you care so much, do it yourself. I finally yelled at her. If you care so much, do it yourself. How dare you? I'm elderly and you're seriously suggesting I wash these in cold water myself. I want to ask if you're serious. I am always serious, I shot back. Her face turned red with anger. She wasn't expecting me to talk back. I wasn't backing down either. Why don't you go outside and check for yourself? You've been warm inside all day, so you don't realize, do you? It's snowing a lot and unbelievably cold out. The hell? You're telling me to go out in the cold? You're terrible. What about you? You demand that I use cold water in this freezing weather. We argued back and forth. I was determined to stand my ground. I felt bad for Mark, but I couldn't continue to be a good wife if I had to keep living with her. I was glaring at her when she suddenly grabbed my hand tightly and dragged me. I was shocked by her strength, which made me question her age. Before I knew it, she had pushed me out the front door. As I stood there, realizing what had just happened, I heard the door lock behind me. No need for a daughter-in-law like you. Get lost, she shouted. This is my house. You're the one who should leave. I screamed, but it was useless. She was determined to lock me out, ignoring my banging on the door. I was in distress, not sure what to do next. I wasn't wearing a coat, and I didn't have my daughter with me. Thankfully, my phone was in my pocket. I called Victoria, but even though I could hear her phone ringing inside, she didn't answer. I tried calling Mark, who was supposed to return from his trip that night, but he didn't pick up either. I had no choice but to text him. I got locked out of the house by your mom. I'll get hypothermia in the snow. I'll wait for you at a diner nearby. With that, I started walking in the snow. I thought about calling 911, but I didn't want to make a big scene. I was sure Victoria would make up some excuse to make me look bad. It seemed better to just wait at a diner. I wrapped my arms around my freezing body, my breath forming clouds in the cold air. The snow kept falling, piling up on the ground. There were no cars or bikes passing by. It was nighttime, and the streets were empty. I kept moving forward through the quiet darkness. When I finally reached the diner, I couldn't believe my eyes. Closed due to the snowstorm. The place I had hoped to find refuge in was closed. What a night. I decided to head to the police station instead. Rather than calling and waiting for them to come, I kept walking, feeling a sense of despair as the snow fell heavily around me. The tips of my fingers and toes were going numb. When I checked the time on my phone, I realized it had been an hour since I'd been thrown out. I tried calling Victoria again, but she still didn't answer. As I walked briskly through the transformed landscape, I suddenly stopped. I thought I heard something. I realized I was at the beginning of a bridge that crossed over a river. I listened carefully. Help? I heard it clearly this time. I ran toward the voice and looked down from the bridge, which wasn't very high. To my surprise, I saw someone, an old lady, lying in a shallow part of the river, calling for help. I ran down the bank as fast as I could and into the river. The icy water pierced my feet and legs, turning the coldness into pain, but I kept moving toward her. Are you all right? I asked. Help me, I can't move. I'm so cold, she replied weakly. Stay with me, I said, trying to keep her awake. She must have been relieved to find help because she leaned against me and then passed out. I panicked. My feet and legs were frozen and I couldn't move as I wanted to. Someone help us, I cried up desperately. Just when I thought my calls would go unanswered, I heard a man's voice. Oh my God, are you okay? Then I saw Mark rushing toward me. The moment I saw him, I lost consciousness. When I opened my eyes again, I saw a white ceiling. Honey, are you awake? Mark's concerned face hovered over me. He told me I was in the hospital. After he pulled the old lady and me out of the river, he called 911. It had been the night before, and I had been sleeping since then. Your business trip? I asked. When you called me, I was still on the plane. I called you back as soon as I landed, but you didn't pick up. There was a long line for a taxi, so I took a train and was just walking back when I saw you going into the river. What luck, I said, relieved. I panicked, thinking you were trying to throw yourself into the river, he admitted. Well, it seems the old lady did, though. Mark told me she had tried to commit suicide because she was depressed about her life. When she hit the freezing water, the shock brought her back to her senses and she tried to get out, but her body was so cold and frozen that she couldn't move. If she hadn't been found when she was, she might not have made it. Knowing she survived brought me some relief, and I began to feel drowsy again. Sleep, you must be exhausted. Take a good rest, Mark said gently. His kind words, along with the warmth of the hospital room, reassured me, and I slowly drifted off to sleep. Despite my anger at Victoria, I stayed in the hospital for a few days, recovering my strength. When I finally returned home, I froze at the front door, dreading what I might find. Victoria hadn't shown her face once while I was in the hospital, and of course, she hadn't apologized. She had locked me out in the snow and nearly killed me. I knew I couldn't live with her anymore. With a heavy heart, I opened the front door. As soon as I stepped inside, I was shocked to see Victoria standing there. "I'm very sorry, Sally," she said, her voice catching me by surprise. "Pardon me?" I asked, stunned. She continued, "I didn't imagine things would turn out like that. I sincerely regret losing my temper and kicking you out. Please forgive me," she begged, tears in her eyes. I couldn't believe it. She had always been so condescending, always looking down on me. No matter what, she had locked me out in the snow. I was deeply skeptical. It seemed too crazy to believe there wasn't a catch. I looked at her with suspicious eyes. "What would you do if I said I can't forgive you?" I asked. Victoria flinched a little. "I thought you were going to freeze from the cold," and then I cut her off. "Are you telling me you didn't know what could happen if someone was locked out in a heavy snowfall?" "If you say you didn't know, does that mean you're crazy?" Her face turned red as my words sank in. "What did you say?" Victoria shouted. "Just because I apologize, you're trying to take advantage of me? How dare you?" She continued angrily. "Mark said he'd end our living arrangement if I didn't apologize to you, so I had no choice but to obey him. Do you get it? I did what I was told, so it's over now. Get to your chores if you understood." She had taken my little provocation easily, revealing her true intentions. There was no real remorse, just as I expected. People don't change overnight, and someone like her probably never will. As if to prove my point, she started bullying me again right away. "You must wash my clothes in cold water," she demanded. "You must cook only my favorite meals. If it's bad, I'll throw it out." Oh no, there was no saving grace for her. I sighed loudly and turned my face away, thinking, "Honey, what should I do now?" Just then, Mark appeared, standing a short distance away, just out of Victoria's sight. He had been there since the beginning, listening. "Mark, what about your work?" Victoria asked, surprised to see him. "I took the day off to be with Sally," he replied. "Anyway, you're not sorry at all, are you?" "Oh no. That was just a joke, of course." Victoria tried to cover up her behavior, but it was clear she didn't mean it. "If it was a joke, it wasn't funny at all," Mark said sternly. "I told you to be deeply remorseful for what you did, apologize to her, and never do anything like that again." "I did apologize, didn't I?" Victoria snapped back, trying to defend herself. "It was just a little joke." "It was a very bad joke," Mark responded, clearly not amused. I had told Mark to stay back and observe, knowing Victoria would reveal her true self. She reacted exactly as I expected, maybe even worse. I couldn't help but laugh at her desperate excuses. "What are you laughing at, Sally? You know you're—" "Hey Mom, I'm talking to you right now." "Listen to me," Mark interrupted, his tone firm. Victoria was shocked, her tears flowing as she realized her son was truly upset with her. "How can you treat Sally so terribly? She was worried about you and agreed to have you live with us." I was a little out of line earlier, but I never bullied her. Victoria tried to deny it, still attempting to shift the blame. "I just commented on her cooking a few times because I wanted her to know my tastes. I told her to take my clothes to the dry cleaner, but she said it was a waste of money and wanted to wash them herself. And when I suggested she wear makeup, she didn't listen and even threw her cosmetics away in front of me." Victoria was grasping at straws, but Mark wasn't buying any of it. I sometimes wondered if she was being sarcastic. It seemed like she didn't want to take any responsibility for what she had done. I had no choice but to take out my phone and play back the recording. "Those are expensive clothes, so you must wash them by hand," her voice played clearly. Victoria screamed and tried to grab my phone, but I dodged her and kept playing the recording. "You must wash them in cold water. No need for a daughter-in-law like you. Get lost." The recording continued, including the sound of her dragging me out and locking the door, ignoring my calls to her. of the abuse you said and did that day was recorded," I said calmly. I had my phone in my pocket and recorded every conversation we had, just to keep evidence. Victoria was clearly agitated. "Do you have any last words?" I asked her. "Last words? What do you mean?" she replied, confused. "This is the end," I said firmly. "You trampled on my kindness. I want you out of the house. No more contact. You can live alone. You still have the money from selling your house and your pension. You'll be fine without my support." "Wait a minute, Mark. Are you going to throw me out? Are you betraying your only parent?" she pleaded. "You betrayed me," Mark responded, his anger clear. Victoria was speechless, slumping her shoulders in defeat. The silence was broken only by the sound of melting snow falling from the roof. Everything happened quickly after that. Mark and I packed up Victoria's belongings while she sat there, doing nothing. Her hometown was 2 hours away by car, where she had some relatives, though I doubted they would pay much attention to her now. She had no friends, as she never went out when she lived with us. I guess she had too much time on her hands, which she used to bully me. But none of that mattered anymore. "Bye-bye, Grandma," our daughter waved as Victoria left. Victoria finally started to cry when she saw her lovely granddaughter smiling at her. The taxi drove off, leaving her behind. I felt nothing, just relief. Days and months passed. Victoria was living alone and lonely. Sometimes she called to let us know she was okay, but as I promised, we never met or spoke with her again. She continued to live alone and lonely. The cost of destroying our happiness was high, but I finally found peace of mind after Victoria left. Now I'm enjoying a quiet moment while serving a surprise visitor. The sound of the washing machine spinning is calming. My guest is the elderly woman I saved on that snowy day. After living alone for a while, she became depressed, but the icy river water made her want to live a little longer. She told me that my son had invited her to move in with his family, which was great news. She decided instead to move closer to them, as she didn't want to be a burden. She shared, "My son lives far away, and I haven't seen him much. Since my husband passed away, I've been alone and thought nothing good would come from leaving. But now I know it doesn't have to be that way. I'm very happy to hear that. As long as I'm alive, I'll keep going. I'm so grateful to you for rescuing me that day." We smiled at each other, knowing that the old lady had endured a long and lonely life, but found happiness again. Victoria had disrupted her own family life, and there are many ways to spend retirement. Everyone's path is different, but your attitude can make it either happy or unhappy. Looking at the two elderly women, I get a sense of what I want my future to be like. I remind myself to live in a way that keeps my life peaceful and happy, both now and in retirement. I'm sorry to hear that. Here's a rewritten version. In the midst of our wedding ceremony, a shocking disruption shattered the serene atmosphere. My mother-in-law, with an air of audacity, seized the microphone from my father-in-law mid-speech. Her words cut through the air like a blade. I apologized for my daughter's lack of beauty. The guests shifted uncomfortably as her declaration hung in the air, a bitter contrast to the joyous occasion. I glanced at my husband, hoping for support, only to be met with a chilling smirk. My senses reeled as I struggled to comprehend the sudden turn of events. A voice, firm and resolute, broke the stunned silence. An older gentleman rose from his seat, his actions commanding attention. "Is that all?" he demanded, his gaze piercing. Without waiting for an answer, he approached me with purpose. Recognizing him, my husband's expression betrayed a mix of surprise and fear. Before I could gather my thoughts, the man took my arm and ushered me away from the chaos. "Let's leave," he said gently, leading me through the corridors, away from the unwanted spectacle of our wedding day. A whirlwind of thoughts swept through my mind, painting a vivid picture of my life. My name is Angela, a 35-year-old woman shaped by the tumultuous currents of my past. Raised in a single-parent household after my parents divorced during my elementary school years, I became intimately acquainted with resilience and responsibility from a tender age. In my 20s, life took an unexpected turn when my mother fell ill, requiring my devoted care. Days melded into nights as I juggled the demands of work and the duties of a caregiver, my world revolving around her needs. Despite the challenges, I persevered, driven by love and duty. As the years passed, still unmarried in my 30s, fate intervened in the form of Stephen. A chance encounter at my office, where I manned the reception desk, blossomed into something more profound. Stephen, a man of kindness and understanding, saw beyond the complexities of my life and extended a hand of love. His proposal, offered despite the weight of my caregiving responsibilities, stirred a maelstrom of emotions within me. Could I dare to embrace happiness while tethered to the obligations of my past? Dope gnawed at my resolve, a relentless companion in the journey of love. Yet Stephen's unwavering support shattered the walls of my uncertainty. With tender words, he laid bare his heart, offering not just a partnership, but a promise of inclusion. "Let us be a family of 3, he proposed, a beacon of light in the darkness of my doubts. Moved by his heartfelt proposal, I made the decision to marry Stephen. However, when we shared the news with our parents, the reactions couldn't have been more contrasting. While my mother overflowed with joy, Stephen's mother, whom we'll call Ruth, responded with cutting disdain. During our first visit to Steve's home as an engaged couple, Ruth's words pierced the air like arrows. "I must be frank, I don't consider a woman from a single-parent family suitable for my son," she declared, her tone laced with contempt. As we embarked on wedding preparations, Ruth's hostility persisted, veiled in sarcasm and barbed remarks. Her comments, dripping with disdain, chipped away at my resolve. Despite her relentless jabs, I held my ground, refusing to allow her insults to go unchallenged. "I can endure your insults, but I won't tolerate you speaking ill of my mother," I asserted firmly, meeting her venomous words with unwavering strength. Yet Ruth's attacks only escalated, accusing me of using deceit to ensnare her son and casting unfounded aspersions on my family. Faced with her baseless accusations, I stood my ground, defending my honor and that of my loved ones. Though the road ahead seemed fraught with challenges, I refused to allow Ruth's bitterness to tarnish the love Stephen and I shared. With each attempt to assert myself, Ruth's venomous retorts intensified, leaving me feeling increasingly powerless. The thought of confiding in Steve crossed my mind, but I couldn't bear to burden him with unnecessary worries as we embarked on our journey into married life. Ruth's audacity reached new heights as she began to meddle in our wedding plans, even intruding upon the sacred ritual of selecting a wedding dress. Standing alongside my husband, she boldly declared her intent to choose the gown herself. Steve, oblivious to the tension, praised his mother's sense of style and eagerly supported her involvement. "I appreciate your gesture, but I want the freedom to choose a dress that resonates with me personally," I asserted gently, refusing to relinquish control over a decision so deeply personal. "I traveled all this way for you, only to be met with disappointment," my mother-in-law lamented, her words dripping with hurt. My husband's immediate defense of her, always swift to side with her, especially when she portrayed herself as the victim, stung deeply. Yet, when it came to the wedding dress, a symbol of my joy and individuality, I couldn't yield. "I understand, but I must choose my own dress. This moment is too important to compromise on," I affirmed resolutely, unwilling to sacrifice my vision for the sake of appeasing others. Despite her reluctance, my mother-in-law relented, though her resentment lingered. As the morning of the wedding dawned, her simmering animosity erupted into a shocking display of cruelty. "What a dreadful dress! And the veil? Tasteless," she scoffed upon encountering my chosen attire in the dressing room. Her words cut deep, a venomous attack on the culmination of my dreams. Despite my rising distress, I endeavored to maintain composure, determined to sidestep any turmoil on my special day. My mother, who adores sewing, crafted this veil with love. We selected the dress together, and I truly adore it, I explained evenly, hoping to diffuse the tension. But my attempt at peace was shattered as my mother-in-law's eyes widened with fury. In an instant, her calm facade crumbled, replaced by a storm of rage. With a sudden motion, she produced a can of coffee from her purse, unleashing its contents onto my beloved dress. Shock paralyzed me as the dark liquid stained the pristine fabric, rendering it unsalvageable. Desperation gripped me as I reached for a nearby towel, but my efforts proved futile against the irreversible damage. "This is the consequence of disobedience," she spat, her voice dripping with malice. With a final decree, she declared my attire unfit for the occasion, leaving me with no choice but to comply with her demands. As she exited the dressing room, her vindictive act hung heavy in the air, a bitter reminder of the power she wielded over my happiness. She must have deliberately brought the canned coffee, plotting to ruin my dress all along, evident from the fact that she had another dress prepared. Fueled by a mix of anger and frustration, I trembled with disbelief at her calculated cruelty. Seeking solace, I retreated to the separate waiting room where my husband awaited, tears streaming down my cheeks as I recounted the ordeal. This is utterly unfair. It's going to cast a shadow over our entire wedding. What would you like me to do about it? He snapped, his frustration palpable. Before I could finish, he cut me off, his voice rising in anger. His sudden outburst mirrored the venomous intensity of his mother's actions. Stunned by his abrupt shift in demeanor, I recoiled, taken aback by the harshness of his words. Yet just as swiftly as his anger erupted, it dissipated, replaced by a sense of remorse. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to lash out like that. I'm just feeling overwhelmed, he apologized, his agitation evident as he wiped beads of sweat from his brow. Despite his apology, a pang of guilt gnawed at me for burdening him with my troubles on such a momentous day. In an effort to diffuse the tension, I opted to lend an ear to my husband's concerns. You seem really stressed. What's going on? I inquired gently, hoping to offer some support. It's a bit chaotic. The CEO of my company unexpectedly decided to attend our wedding. It's a long story, but basically he heard about our wedding from Steven's boss, who happened to meet him here at the hotel. My husband explained, his voice tinged with apprehension. And to top it off, one of my colleagues fell ill last minute, so they invited the CEO to fill in. The coincidence was certainly striking, and I couldn't help but see the potential career implications. It's quite the opportunity. Your skills might just earn you a promotion, I remarked, though it couldn't shake the feeling of frustration at his dismissive tone. Realizing the futility of arguing with him in his current state, I chose to withdraw from the conversation, allowing him to stew in his own thoughts. With the wedding ceremony underway, we exchanged vows atop the hotel's rooftop, the picturesque setting providing a serene backdrop to our union. As the moments passed without incident, a sense of relief washed over me, the earlier turmoil momentarily forgotten. However, the tranquility was short-lived, shattered by the impending family speeches at the reception. My mother-in-law's words cut through the air like a blade, leaving me seething with anger and indignation. Despite my father-in-law's attempts to intervene, she persisted, clutching the microphone tightly as she unleashed her vitriol for all to hear. Just as I reached my breaking point, a middle-aged man rose from his seat with determined resolve, striding purposefully towards me. You don't deserve to endure this, he declared, his gaze fixed squarely on my mother-in-law. Without hesitation, he extended a guiding hand, leading me away from the escalating confrontation. My mother-in-law's outrage was palpable as she recoiled at the interruption to her tirade. However, her fury paled in comparison to the shock that rippled through the room as the man's identity was revealed. Who dares to interrupt my speech? She exclaimed, her indignation faltering as she realized the stature of the man before her. Beside her, Stephen's complexion drained of color as the truth dawned upon him. In a whirlwind of confusion, we hastily retreated from the reception hall, leaving the chaos behind. Sweating profusely and visibly flustered, Stephen struggled to regain his composure as we sought refuge in the relative privacy of the dressing room. Why is my father here? I gasped, the revelation sending shockwaves through my already tumultuous world. That's correct. Stephen's company's CEO is also my biological father. The dissolution of my parents' marriage stemmed from irreconcilable differences. Their constant conflicts, exacerbated by their shared workplace, led them to part ways in the belief that it was for my well-being. Despite the divorce, they maintained sporadic contact over the years. I had grown accustomed to seeing my father several times a month, his consistent child support ensuring my needs were met as I transitioned into adulthood. Even when my mother fell ill, he remained a steadfast presence, offering support in various forms, fostering a strong bond between us. Yet the revelation of his position as Stephen's boss caught me off guard. I never knew my father was the CEO of Stephen's company, I murmured, grappling with the unexpected twists of fate. His sudden appearance at my wedding, contrary to his prior commitment to a business engagement, only added to the bewildering turn of events. Why did you come if you had an important meeting? I questioned, perplexed by his change in plans. My meeting concluded earlier than anticipated. I couldn't miss the opportunity to give you this gift in person, he explained, his presence offering a glimmer of solace amidst the chaos. As I made my way to the entrance, I encountered an employee who revealed an unexpected twist. My father was the boss Stephen had mentioned. Learning of the wedding through routine preparations for a gift, my father seized the chance to attend upon discovering the vacant seat due to a last-minute cancellation. "Why didn't you tell me?" I questioned, feeling a mix of surprise and confusion at his secrecy. "After discussing with your mother, we thought it would be a delightful surprise. I never anticipated it would unfold like this," my father confessed, a tinge of sadness clouding his expression. Before I could delve deeper into the matter, the dressing room door swung open, revealing my mother-in-law's ominous presence. Her saccharine tone sent shivers down my spine as she attempted to coerce me back into the fold. The realization that she must have learned of my father's identity from her husband's revelation sent a chill through me. "Who do you think caused all of this?" "It was just a harmless joke," she declared, her attempt at levity falling flat in the face of my father's unexpected appearance. "How dare you make such a tasteless joke at my daughter's expense? It's unforgivable," my father shot back, his indignation mirroring my own. "What? So it wasn't a jest after all? You genuinely called my daughter ugly?" My father's confrontational tone left my mother-in-law stumbling for words, her feeble attempts at evasion falling flat. In a flurry of urgency, my husband burst into the room, his hurried footsteps echoing in the tense atmosphere. He knelt before my father, seeking to atone for his mother's transgressions. "I apologize for my mother's indiscretion," he implored. "You're apologizing to the wrong person." My father's icy gaze bore down on my husband, his words laced with disappointment and reproach. "Angela, I'm sorry. My mother acted independently," my husband addressed me, his voice tinged with regret. "If that's true, then why didn't you intervene when she insulted me?" I demanded, my shock rendering me immobile. "And your father attempted to intervene?" I added, incredulous. "But you seemed content to sit back and watch," I accused, my voice trembling with hurt and betrayal. "You're mistaken. My demeanor was misconstrued. Regardless, the sole responsibility lies with my mother," my husband insisted, his defense ringing hollow in the wake of his mother's egregious behavior. My husband erupted, his accusatory finger aimed squarely at his mother. "Stephen, are you turning against your own mother? We agreed to teach this insolent wife a lesson together, didn't we? Hey, enough with the unnecessary remarks. You said we needed to put this wife, who refuses to let Mama have her way with the dress, in her place. Keep quiet." My husband silenced his mother, his hand muffling her protests in a somewhat comical fashion. "Now, care to shed some light on this situation?" I prodded, my voice edged with urgency. "No, this was my mother's doing alone. It's for your own benefit, frankly." "At this point, don't you think?" My husband's response faltered as my father interjected, his probing gaze compelling him to speak. "When Angela insisted on choosing her wedding dress, my mother suggested she would become disobedient if not disciplined properly," my husband finally confessed, his tone tinged with reluctance. "What's wrong with choosing my own dress? Isn't it natural for a wife to heed her mother-in-law's wishes? If you can't even manage that, I feared you might become an obstinate wife who defies her husband in the future," my mother-in-law interjected, her words dripping with disdain. "Marriage is a partnership of equals, isn't it? There's no hierarchy. If I can't control you, what's the use of marrying someone on the brink of aging?" My husband's admission hung heavy in the air, shattering the illusion of love and commitment. The truth spilled forth. He hadn't chosen me out of affection for who I am, but as a convenient pawn in his game. All of his declarations of caring for my mother, of wanting to forge a family together, were they all falsehoods? "Of course, you had a tidy sum tucked away, didn't you?" "I had plans to use that to build a duplex. I envisioned you toiling away like a servant while my mother and I enjoyed our happiness. But now, it's all gone to waste." His words dripped with bitterness, revealing the depths of his deception. Once my husband unleashed his true feelings, there was no reining him in. His desire for control extended to draining our savings, a selfish act that left me reeling in disbelief. His expression shifted from assertive to shocked as he realized the gravity of his words. "Wait, no, I didn't mean that. It's over. I can't have a wife who won't spend money or serve me," he stuttered, attempting to backtrack. "Stop. I won't tolerate such disrespect," I declared, my resolve firm. "I can't marry someone who views me as nothing more than a servant." His composure shattered, my husband paced nervously, grappling with the reality of our crumbling relationship. Then, as if struck by sudden clarity, he proposed a feeble solution. "But our wedding is today. We can't call it off now," he reasoned, desperate to salvage the situation. I'll handle the guests and their gifts. Since your mother's actions led to this, you'll cover the expenses, I countered, refusing to shoulder the blame for his family's interference. You can't be serious. This breakup is your fault for overreacting to a single incident with my mom, he retorted, his words dripping with defensiveness. All the hurtful things you've said to me, they're all here, he added, pointing accusingly at me. Retrieving my smartphone from my purse, I pressed play, unleashing a barrage of hurtful words in my mother-in-law's own voice. Poor, ugly, harsh woman. Each insult echoed through the room, a damning testament to her cruelty. When did I record all this? I'm not naive, I declared, my resolve unyielding. I'll be seeking compensation for the emotional distress you've caused. I was merely trying to discipline my daughter-in-law. I've done nothing wrong, my mother-in-law protested weakly. If you won't pay willingly, I'll see you in court. Let's see if you'll repeat those words before a judge. This isn't a laughing matter. Realizing the precariousness of her position, my mother-in-law paled, her defiance crumbling. I'll also be reconsidering your position at the company, I added, turning to address my father-in-law. With this final blow, my husband's facade shattered, his resolve crumbling as he sank to his knees. I'm sorry, Angela. Please forgive me, he pleaded, his voice thick with remorse. That's right, Angela. You're already married. You can't just throw it away so easily. If we work together, we can overcome this obstacle and have a great future together, my husband and mother-in-law pleaded desperately. Shrugging off their attempts at reconciliation, I fixed them with a steely glare. Enough of your deceitful words. You're both despicable, I spat before storming out of the dressing room. Keeping true to my word, I proceeded to dissolve my engagement with Stephen and filed a lawsuit against my mother-in-law for the emotional torment she caused. The financial burden of the failed wedding fell squarely on my ex-husband's shoulders, serving as a harsh reminder of the consequences of his actions. Word of the debacle spread through his workplace, resulting in his ostracization by colleagues. Under my father's directive, he was relocated to a distant branch in Nebraska, effectively demoting him. My ex-mother-in-law faced scorn from her own relatives for sullying their family's reputation with a divorce. Meanwhile, my ex-father-in-law wasted no time in ejecting her from their home. As for me, I redirected my focus to my career, having no desire to entertain the notion of marriage again. Over time, my parents found solace and our family relationships flourished once more with occasional gatherings over dinner. Today, I lead a fulfilling and content life. Let's mark our anniversary with an adventure, I suggested to my hardworking husband. He deserved a break, and I was eager to indulge us both. For our first anniversary, I spared no expense, booking us a lavish room in a celebrity-frequented luxury hotel. It was a gesture aimed solely at bringing joy to my husband's heart, yet little did I know it would set the stage for everything that followed. Let's rewind a year back. At 28, I found myself married to Logan at 26 without the traditional dating preamble. Ours was what you might call a zero-day marriage. We crossed paths on a dating app, a decision I made impulsively one tipsy evening. Initially skeptical of the digital dating world, I found myself drawn in by its tales of the unknown, fueled by lingering drinks and curiosity. Amidst a sea of conversations that often fizzled out, Logan stood out. After a month of daily exchanges, we agreed to meet, and from the moment we did, it felt like reconnecting with an old friend. On our first meeting, Logan proposed the idea of dating with marriage in mind. And despite my reservations, I went along with it. It was swift, perhaps too swift, but there was an undeniable pull between us. Before long, we were arranging family meetings, caught up in the whirlwind of our budding relationship. Looking back, I see now the signs I missed, the subtle cues that hinted at what was to come. As we gathered for the family meeting at Logan's home, his excitement was palpable. "Mom, I've brought home my future wife," he announced proudly. Though I felt a twinge of self-consciousness, his mother Grace and sister Lily matched his enthusiasm, setting the stage for the next chapter of our story. As we exchanged pleasantries, Grace warmly greeted me, dispelling any formality. "Let's drop the formalities," she said with a smile. "We're becoming family after all." Her words filled me with warmth, reassured by the prospect of joining such a welcoming family. The tension dissolved instantly, replaced by a sense of familiarity that made it seem as though we'd known each other for years. Just as I was basking in the newfound ease, Lily posed an unexpected question. "So, how much do you make a year?" she inquired, her curiosity bordering on intrusive. Logan swiftly intervened, offering an explanation. "I've just started a new job, so it's entry level for me. Cho's been a nurse for 8 years, so she earns about twice as much," he explained, a hint of pride in his voice. Grace's response caught me off guard. "Wow, you're rich. What a fortunate marriage," she exclaimed, patting Logan's shoulder approvingly. Although his modesty belied the situation, I couldn't shake the unease that crept in. The absence of Logan's father for the past 5 years meant they relied on Lily's part-time cleaning job and Grace's pension. Logan contributed from his meager earnings, a fact that seemed to escape the conversation. Then came the question of our living arrangements. "Where will you live?" Grace inquired, her curiosity tinged with expectation. "We have a condo," I replied, admitting I'd bought it last year, never anticipating marriage. Lily's response veered towards surprise and a hint of envy. "You own a condo. Must be nice," she remarked, a subtle suggestion of newfound wealth. I hastened to clarify, emphasizing that I financed it myself and that the mortgage wasn't significantly different from renting. Grace's tone shifted, expressing reliance and a hint of expectation. "We'll be counting on you from now on," she stated, alluding to potential future assistance. The notion of sharing as a family left me unsettled, but I chose to defer the discomfort for another time. With gratitude and a promise to seek guidance, I excused myself, eager to leave the spotlight. Our aversion to being the center of attention led us to forego a grand wedding ceremony, opting instead for a simple paperwork filing, a decision influenced by my demanding job. I rarely wore rings, so opting for a modest one seemed sufficient. There was no grand proposal with an engagement ring, but I accepted that this was the reality of our situation. After tying the knot, we both remained diligent in our work. Taking charge of our finances, I started stashing away funds, gradually building a safety net for our future. However, after 6 months of marriage, I stumbled upon a concerning discovery. $2,000 had vanished from our account. The only plausible culprit was Logan. Confronting him that evening, I questioned the disappearance. "Did you know $2,000 was withdrawn from our bank account?" I demanded, urging him to contact the bank. Initially taken aback, Logan swiftly adopted a defensive stance, brushing off the issue as a mere loan to his mother. Infuriated by his nonchalant attitude, I pressed him further, emphasizing the importance of communication in financial matters. His dismissive response only fueled my frustration, with a sinking suspicion fueled by a previous encounter where his mother boasted of a casino win. I realized the money likely fueled her gambling habits. Up until then, our savings were pooled, but following this incident, I resolved to squirrel away extra funds separately. Despite this rift, I assumed Logan's demeanor would remain unchanged as long as family matters didn't surface. He was diligently employed after all. However, our first wedding anniversary prompted a desire to deviate from our usual frugality and indulge in a bit of extravagance. Excitement bubbled within me as I arrived home, eager to unveil a surprise trip to Logan. However, my anticipation was dampened by the presence of Lily, who had been making frequent appearances lately, a routine that was starting to wear on me. Returning home after a taxing day of work to find her there was becoming a source of stress. In hindsight, the timing couldn't have been worse for sharing the news of our planned getaway. Yet I couldn't contain my enthusiasm about the luxury hotel reservation I had painstakingly secured. Logan's eyes sparkled with delight at the mention of the trip, but it was Lily who reacted most fervently. "Is it that hotel from the TV ads?" she exclaimed incredulously. Her tone carried a hint of envy, which I met with a confident explanation. "Since we've never taken a trip alone, we decided to indulge this time," I asserted, recounting the nerve-wracking experience of securing the booking on the day slots opened. Lily's response dripped with resentment. "How unfair of you," she retorted, her words tinged with bitterness. "Just because you're a nurse doesn't mean you should hog all the travel opportunities." She appealed to a sense of familial obligation, urging us to relinquish the trip in an act of filial piety. However, I couldn't overlook her penchant for travel despite her claims of financial strain, nor her propensity for fare evasion, a behavior she boasted about shamelessly. Her thinly veiled attempts at manipulation left me resolute in my decision. "Absolutely not," I declared firmly, determined to stand my ground. "We've been saving for this trip, and Logan works tirelessly. We deserve this splurge." Lily's displeasure morphed into a pointed remark directed at Logan, casting aspersions on my character and our marriage. Despite the discord, I remained steadfast in my resolve. There was no way I would forfeit our long-awaited trip to appease Lily's sense of entitlement. I felt a surge of anger as Logan remained silent, his gaze fixed downward. His inability to defend me only fueled my frustration. As Lily departed, her muttered remark casting me as the villain, Logan's puzzled expression mirrored my own disappointment. The excitement surrounding our trip dissipated, replaced by an uncomfortable tension that lingered as we retired for the night in an awkward silence. Normally, a good night's sleep would ease my troubles, but the following day brought an unexpected turn of events. Logan's words struck me like a blow when he suggested going on the trip with his mother and sister instead, excluding me entirely. I was taken aback, vehemently opposed to the idea. I couldn't shake the suspicion that his sudden change of heart stemmed from the late-night texts flooding his phone, likely filled with manipulative words from his family. His accusation of my heartlessness only deepened the divide between us. Marriage, he argued, was about uniting families, not individual desires. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling of being unfairly targeted. Despite our attempts to reason with each other, the conversation devolved into a stalemate, leaving us at an impasse. The disappointment was palpable as what was meant to be a joyous occasion now soared into a source of conflict. Returning home the next day to a tense atmosphere, I found my mother-in-law and sister-in-law waiting for me. With a smug expression, my mother-in-law declared, "Welcome back. We've resolved the trip matter. It's settled. The trip will be for me, my daughter, and my son." Shocked into silence, I turned to Logan for an explanation, though deep down, I doubted any justification could appease my frustration. Logan's response only fueled my disbelief. "It's as my mom said," he explained. "I shared our recent issues with her, and she proposed this solution. I'm going, you're staying. That's final." Outraged by the lack of consideration, I finally lost my temper, demanding an explanation for their irrational decision. But Logan's reply was laced with venomous words, his anger boiling over. He belittled my profession and reduced me to a mere source of income, revealing a side of him I had never seen before. His psychological abuse cut deep, leaving me feeling foolish for the efforts I had invested in our relationship thus far. Witnessing the altercation, my sister-in-law interjected, urging us to make amends and join them on the trip. But the thought of acquiescing to their unreasonable demands was too much to bear. I couldn't tolerate Logan's dependency on his mother and sister any longer. I've reached a point where I realize I don't need to hold on to affection for Logan or his family anymore. My once warm feelings have cooled to the point where it feels like I've been living in a dream. The idea of going on a trip with someone I've grown to dislike so intensely is unbearable. If his family holds such significance for him, then perhaps it's time to end our relationship. Let's proceed with the divorce, just as I suggested. It seems like the only logical solution to this impasse. Logan agrees, albeit with a hint of relief, suggesting we discuss it further after the trip. For now, he insists, the trip must take precedence. Feeling defeated, I reluctantly concede, allowing his family to have their way. When I inform Logan of my decision, he's quick to express his gratitude, assuring me he'll buy me a souvenir and even suggesting I might want some time alone to relax. His cheerful demeanor grates on me, but I've resolved to see this through. Taking matters into my own hands, I arranged for the hotel reservation to be changed to Logan's name and adjusted to accommodate a party of 3. On the day of their departure, I take the day off to see them off, observing their excitement with a mixture of resignation and amusement. Their overly packed suitcases for a one-night trip draw a chuckle from me as they set off. With them gone, I'm left with a newfound sense of purpose. Over the next 2 days, I embark on a life-changing task, relocating all of Logan's belongings to a rented storage unit. As a minimalist, I don't have much to pack up, but the process keeps me busy and focused on the fresh start that lies ahead. With the help of a friend from work, we swiftly complete the task in less than 2 hours. Now, there's no reason for Logan to return. This condo, purchased in my name when I was single, will remain a sanctuary from him. The locksmith I've arranged arrives promptly, ensuring that Logan is permanently barred from entering the premises. Additionally, I've sought legal advice from a lawyer named Mason regarding the divorce proceedings. Armed with audio evidence of the psychological abuse I endured, Mason assures me of a guaranteed victory and offers to represent me. Relieved to have someone else handle the divorce talks, I focus on tying up loose ends. Meanwhile, Logan and his family are under the mistaken impression that the hotel stay is prepaid, unaware that I had only made reservations. As a gesture for our anniversary, I had even arranged for a fancy cake and champagne, intending to surprise him. However, all expenses were to be settled at checkout. As anticipated, my phone buzzes incessantly around checkout time, but I ignore the calls with a sense of satisfaction. I can only imagine their shock when confronted with the hefty bill at the hotel. True to my expectations, I end up in police custody, unable to pay. Washing my hands of the situation, I send the divorce papers and the key to the storage unit containing Logan's belongings to his family home. With Logan and his family out of the picture, my condo returns to its peaceful state. I had prepared for the inevitable contestation of the divorce, with Mason handling everything on my behalf. Despite their financial struggles, Logan's family manages to scrape together enough money to secure their release. However, upon their return, their aggression leads to police intervention. Given the ongoing divorce mediation due to Logan's psychological abuse, he is slapped with a restraining order. Unable to afford a legal battle, his family quickly agrees to the divorce, bringing closure to the tumultuous chapter of my life. In the divorce proceedings, I assert my right to compensation for the psychological abuse endured during our marriage. Surprisingly, becoming single again proves to be less daunting than anticipated. Meanwhile, it appears that Logan's family continues to rely on his income, likely exacerbated by his gambling habits that he couldn't seem to shake. Logan's own employment instability becomes evident as he struggles to hold down a job, often calling in sick or even quitting impulsively. Despite my concerns about his behavior, he dismisses them, citing mental health issues. However, his inability to maintain steady employment leads to financial strain for his family. His sister's unemployment adds to their financial woes, and their refusal of welfare assistance only compounds their debt. To make matters worse, I've noticed suspicious characters lurking around their home, adding a sense of unease to their already turbulent situation. In contrast, my life post-divorce is remarkably stress-free. Flourishing in my career, I've even been promoted to supervisor, a role that I relish despite its challenges. With only myself to care for, I find I can cut corners on household chores, allowing me more time to focus on my own well-being. Though I hadn't planned on dating for a while, I found companionship with Caleb, a doctor who had been a supportive confidant before my marriage. Unlike my ex-husband, Caleb is both financially and emotionally stable. Still, I approach the idea of marriage cautiously now, mindful of the lessons learned from my past. Reflecting on my journey, I can't help but feel a sense of gratitude for the unexpected turn of events. In hindsight, I'm thankful that they took that ill-fated trip, unwittingly freeing me